make center the best place that it can be. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May you seated.
Thank you.
That's the teacher in me coming out. We will now open the floor for the public hearing for ordinance 23-10 for burial on private property text amendment. And I'm going to ask Mr. Blunt to come forward and give us some information on this.
Seeing the large crowd in the room, I don't think this one generated much interest.
I was interested when I read it. I didn't even realize.
Didn't realize it was a problem, did you?
No.
That's the first comment I get out of everybody on this one. Is people really getting buried and stuff. This is one of those things that you want to take action on before it actually happens. And unfortunately, a lot of communities, their leadership gets a call, and you know that so-and-so down at the corner is burying his mother in the backyard. And is there anything we can do about that?
And that mean I have to dig up my uncle?
No, if you got him in the ground before this ordinance is enacted, you're good. So what this is a preemptive ordinance so that in the future this will not happen. State law allows burial on any private property as long as it's a certain distance away from water sources and property lines. So unless you have a local ordinance in place, state law allows people to bury their friends and family remains wherever they want to. So this is an ordinance to control that.
Now you still can sprinkle remains, is that right?
You can still sprinkle remains if you have a family burial plot existing. You can continue to use that, but you cannot dig a hole in the backyard with plot ground.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt.
Don't have too much turnout.
No, I don't have anyone signed up on here. Did we receive any text or email?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is there any person out there who still wishes to speak on this issue?
You think it's someone?
I can't see. Somebody raising. Okay.
It's a ghost.
Okay. Is there a motion to close this public hearing?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Howell has moved and Mr. Muhammad has seconded. All in favor? Okay. This public hearing is closed. We'll now move to public hearing for ordinance 2311 for the ETJ board membership text amendment. The floor is now open for this public hearing, and Mr. Blunt, if you want to inform us about this.
This one should be taken slightly more seriously than the first one. Although feel free to put these on your consent agenda at your regular meeting if you'd like to. I don't think you're going to get much interest in either. As you're aware, we've had trouble, and most communities do have trouble finding people that live in the ETJ to serve on regulatory boards that require it by statute. You have to have ETJ representation. In our case, that's the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment, which are the same board. We tried through advertisements and notifications on the website and actually making personal contacts with people we knew that lived in the ETJ. We were unable to find anybody that was willing to serve. We had been told by our previous clerk that in the community she served in that they had actually modified their ordinance to allow them to use people that didn't live in the ETJ to fill those slots. I was skeptical of that being legal, but we did some research and found out if we made a good faith effort to find the people in the ETJ that were qualified to serve, and that's how the state statute is written. There was an inadequate number of qualified people in the ETJ to serve. State statute allows you to reach out to other parts of the county or reach in to your city, town, to find new members for filling those positions. So we actually took a good faith effort of sending out a direct mailer with some 200 addresses that we found. We tried to find all the residential addresses located in the ETJ by doing a GIS search, and then sent out a postcard asking these folks if they might be interested in serving on these boards. And we got a grand total of goose egg responses. Nobody wanted to serve. So we are taking the next step in this process, which is to modify the language of our ordinance that currently says they have to live in the ETJ, have to reside in the ETJ is what the language actually says, and adding new language that allows us, after a good faith effort, to find people to serve, that if we can't find those people, that we can appoint people, or we can nominate people. The county commission actually has to appoint them, but we can nominate people that don't live in the ETJ to serve in these positions. So that's what this one is all about.
Okay, thank you. We do not have anyone signed up to speak to this ordinance either. Is there anyone in the audience? No text, email?
No. I do have one question. This is the public hearing. When we pass this on, we will hear it again or put it on our consent agenda.
If you want to hear it again, I'll be glad to stand up and try to say it again.
Because I did hear someone say that they wanted to be here to speak to this, but they're obviously not here. So.
Well, there is a great deal of discussion. Matter of fact, there's a new state statute under consideration to do away with the ETJ. And the proposers of that law, their logic is that the people that live in the ETJ are not represented in any of the process. So they're regulated by the towns, but they don't get a way to express their opinions. This is the way. This is the way the statutes are set up so that the people in the ETJ could have a way, but then we find out we can't get people to serve. So we're having to make the next step, which is to find some other people. We're down now 3 people, 2 ETJs and a chairman retire. So we're 3 people short on that board.
Thank you.
Just as a point of record, one of the I printed out this piece of legislation that you sent to us and asked us to take a look at, and there's one of these pieces in here that talks about abandoned roads and the town's maintenance of roads if they're abandoned. There's another section that talks about a piece of the legislation that has been repealed, and it was talking about ETJ representation on the ETJ, a proportional representation. Does that have anything at all to do with the
The current language of the 160D ordinances or 160D statute is written is that we have to have proportional representation on the ETJ, and to do that you have to calculate that proportion at least each census. And when I got here, I went through the process of calculating how many people actually lived in the ETJ and seeing if our 2 versus 5 was proportional, and it seemed to be pretty close.
But this piece that I have now says Section 3.3, General Statute 160D-307 is repealed.
Yeah, that's the one I just spoke about previously, is that there is a statute out there now that's working its way through committees that would actually repeal the ETJ.
Okay.
We would no longer have ETJ. And there are half a dozen statutes of that type before the legislature this year. The planners across the state are pulling their hair out, and see, I've already done that to mine. Some of these statutes are really going to do some bad things. The unintended consequence of that one is that all that ETJ that municipalities would give up immediately go into management
Of the
of
county.
the county.
Mhm.
The county doesn't have the staff to handle all that, and they don't have the more detailed regulations that municipalities have, so they would immediately be struggling to handle something over 50% of the people in Rowan County live in the municipalities and the ETJs. So Rowan County would pick up a huge number of private parcels of lots that would have to be, from that point forward, zoning, subdivision, etc. Rowan County would have to pick all of that.
Are our county people fighting this?
Most people don't keep track of things like this until they happen and cause problems. The associations, planning association, and municipal association, those associations have been fighting it. More from a way of tweaking the language to try to make it more palatable instead of just trying to get it killed. I think May 4th is a crossover date. That's one of those milestones that we'll be able to see if some of these things are going to survive or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, stand up, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Morgan made the motion, Pat Fred seconded. All in favor? Okay, this public hearing is closed. Okay, we'll now go to consideration of property liens, and I'm gonna ask Mr. Osborne to come forward and talk to us, give us the information about this.
Good evening. Those property liens are for mowing abatements for properties here in town. I also had one, I hope it's in your packet, for a lien for a fine that was unpaid for a failure to comply. This should be for 314 North Rowan Avenue.
Yeah, on the corner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Osborne?
Do we have that? Do we have a copy of that one?
Yes, in your packet. Very first one, I think.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
James, if you could speak to the, we were asking the board to consider this tonight versus waiting until next week, because there's, if you could speak to some about the timing involved with that, the issue with that particular
lien, yes, sir. The 314 North Rowan Avenue lien was urgent in my mind because the homeowners have failed to correspond with me in any form or fashion. They came across them on the street one day, and the wife told me they were going to demolish the property, and I reminded them about the permits for demolition in town, and she made me aware of it. She understood. At the time I spoke to her, she was showing the property to a couple, which I took the impression that maybe they were intending to sell. And so I felt like it would be imperative that we can get this lien for the fine before the property was sold, and lose the ability to enforce our code on property owners for failing to comply. They are now into $50 a day, and as of April 16th or 17th, those will come around. I'll send them a notice about that, but this particular one is for a fine for failing to comply.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion that we act on these liens?
Make a motion that we act on this 314.
Specifically, yes. The other ones are from an abatement.
Well, that's the one you want to get done now. So I'll make a motion that we do this at this time.
Is it 216? 216?
The 314.
314 North Rowan Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
you.
Osborne.
No, I mean, North Orleans.
Okay. Now we'll move to the review of the May 9th, agenda for next week.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
should we just move the others to consent?
So I want to move those to, okay, the other three to consent.
Can we do that?
Okay. Is there anything else that someone feels could be, we feel that could be moved to the consent agenda? The minutes, okay. Any
Well,
discussion on that?
I think the first one, the one on the burial, 23-10 should be in consent agenda. Maybe the other one about board membership, I think we might need to keep that.
For the planning board?
Yes.
Okay, any other?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I have before you there is a additional item that has come about this week that at any point you'd like I will explain, and that may be something that would go on the consent agenda, but I just wanted to call that to your attention. That
Do you want to explain it now?
that would be fine.
Okay, that'd be fine. Please do.
And one thing I wanted to check if Mike, if we have Sky on the Zoom at all? Okay. So we had good news this week on some of the grants that Sky has applied for the public art program, and we had put together the information you have in front of you about a $5,000 grant from the Robertson Family Foundation for the mural project. And then this afternoon, we got more good news from the Woodson Foundation about a $5,000 grant. And so we do not yet have budget amendments because we're determining whether we're going to program this into the current fiscal year or whether we'll program it into next year's budget. But what we would like for the board to do is authorize staff to accept these grants. And so, and again, I only have details on the one right now because we literally got the other one about an hour ago. And so what we can do is have all that ready, though, for the agenda for next week. And this may be something as well that you would like on the consent agenda.
I don't think that can be on the consent agenda.
No, I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we
Okay,
should bring it
you
up.
want to keep it on the regular agenda?
Let's keep it on the regular agenda.
We can add it after, we can just add it after, either number 8 or move it on further down.
Let's put it up under 8, say
Num-
8A.
Okay, so add, this agenda item under.
Yeah,
We'll make it number 9.
Number 9.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, are there any other things that we need to consider for the consent agenda? Any other additions? Okay. I want to back up just a minute because I forgot to ask for a volunteer for the invocation. Is there anyone that wants to volunteer to do the invocation on Tuesday evening? You volunteer? I'll do it. Just put me down for that. That's a whole lot easier than doing this. Okay, we're down on the recognitions. Are there any other recognitions? I did have Anna move the 3 that I was going to do at the last meeting when I couldn't come to this consent agenda. To this recognition, and I want to also recognize the class of 2023 that'll be graduating from North Grand High School. And I will recognize the upcoming 8th graders at North Grand, the upcoming 9th graders at North Grand. They have a ceremony that does that. And the upcoming 6th graders from the North Elementary and Central Class. And I'll send you that. Any other recognition? Maybe on Tuesday night, I think it'd be nice if we recognize Beverly McCall for planning this night event happening on Saturday, 2 to 4:30. I can do that, but it's on you.
I can do it if you want to.
She does go over and above and getting clothing for it.
There was a nice article in the
Yeah.
paper, I think it's today's issue
right.
that I read.
Oh, good.
Okay, any other recognition? Okay, well, if anyone thinks of one, I guess they can get back to you between now and then.
It would be premature, but we have a best class ever graduate who will graduate from Leadership for Land later this month. He's sitting over at that table.
It would be a few weeks
Yeah.
in advance.
Maybe we need to see his final scores before we recognize him.
We can recognize them at the June meeting. And I'll make the final score at the June meeting too. Okay, any other recognition? Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be set on the agenda?
Would you like us to talk about anything else? One item that's further down related to the intergovernmental agreement for the planning grant. That is an item that the county had on their consent agenda this week. This is some state funding that was appropriated through the county, and they're appropriating then to us of about $75,000. That's going to allow us to do planning work in the area near the Yadkin River, and so that may also be an item that could go on the consent agenda. It's what we'll do once that's all. That will lead to us having a very public process of engagement to create a small area plan for that part of town. It'll focus on recreation. It will focus on development, transportation, and so what this funding is going to go to will become very much a topic of discussion. But this is kind of a procedural step.
Well, when's the county commissioners voting on it? I mean, it's on their consent agenda.
It was on their consent agenda on Monday.
Okay, so is there going to be any public announcement or anything like that about it? From the Post about their action?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I doubt it. Again, this funding was actually set up in the budget that the state put together last year, and we've been working with the county on how to proceed, and this is kind of the process that the county folks came up with of putting together a grant agreement with us for us to access the funding that was established about a year ago.
Is there any time limit as far as us getting everything in place?
Steve, you want to come up to the mic?
Right.
Steve, if I could ask you to come to the microphone.
the scope of the plan all along has been a bit of a struggle. We knew it originally started out when all the commercial industrial growth was starting to show itself about a year ago, and we said we probably need to get a plan, an area plan for all this to see how it fits together. And then before we could find a funding source for the plan, all that growth sort of got ahead of us and was sort of locked into a plan of its own at this point. So then the next step was to look at the Yadkin River Trailhead Park, the Wilcox Bridge, and the North Carolina finishing property there at the river, and how are we going to develop that little node, which is so important to the future of Spencer. When we started thinking of $75,000, we thought, well, draw a little bigger ring around that, and you see that the 29 Salisbury Avenue corridor from the river back to Longs Ferry will get a heavy impact from this kind of development. So maybe it needs to be a part of the planning process. And then you've heard over and over the ED 5861 scenario of tying the river all the way back to the standback forest. Do we include that in the scope? We finally realized that until we sat down with a consultant and found out how much we could realistically pack into one plan, we didn't even know what the scope was. So we applied for it through the county, and that application went to the state. It's described just like that. It's a multi-tiered planning effort, focusing primarily on what's going on out at the river, and then expanding out to see how those ripples in the water affect other things. But as far as the structural part of it, as soon as y'all vote the next day, in fact, before the next day, we'll probably be sitting down with a consultant to talk to them about what they think they can do, what's the best approach, how to structure it, how many public input sessions, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so the presentation that we have in here, if this goes on to a consent agenda, then it won't be shown. Is that correct?
Other than being in your package, you wouldn't normally call somebody up to discuss it as far as the consent agenda.
I think it needs to stay on the regular agenda then. Yeah. My feel.
It does. I love a chance to talk, so no problem.
Well, yeah.
Shoot, I'll do a PowerPoint presentation.
I did have Mr. Blunt. I did have one question about it as I was looking through it. When we get to the page that shows the current and then show the future, there's one parcel that's identified in the current as in dark blue, but it's clear in the future. Is there some reason that piece was particularly left out of the future plan?
I would have to look at the drawing you're referring to.
I'm sure you would. It's
I can see this is the parcel that has the corner spin motorcycle. I think that maybe was just the error with putting the two colors together.
The maps
Sorry,
were
in town limits.
Folded together basically to give you a visual perspective of how things will change over time. They're in no way means meant to be detailed in picking out properties and telling you exactly what's going on.
I just wondered if there was...
That's what the planning process will do is start from the general graphics that we've developed already and put detail to it. And the purpose of getting a master plan, as important as knowing what in the heck we're going to do with all this, how we're going to try to influence the growth of that area, is that you take that master plan and attach it to a grant application, and you're much more likely to have a grant approved if they know you've got a plan in place. So whether the plan is even totally accurate and detailed, it's great to have a plan in place done by a professional organization.
And is $75,000 going to go very far?
That's a good question. This day and age, I've been bumping more and more into the cost of construction and how $75,000 doesn't go very far in construction anymore. Is that true? I look at your project every day when I drive by, and I wonder how far $75,000 went on that one. I don't know. Again, we need to find out from the consultants how far we can stretch.
All right, and it also says, and the account agrees that no more than $120,000 in state funds, including any interest earnings accrued from those funds, may be used for the annual salary of any individual or nonprofit. That doesn't that doesn't.
Doesn't make
include-
good sense, does it? We only got $75,000.
Well, we have to match the money, I know. I mean, the town will be responsible for some of the monies involved, if I read this correctly.
No, ma'am.
I think that maybe was some boilerplate language.
Yeah, all that's boilerplate language.
Okay,
And it's just a way of making sure that you're not hiring me as your consultant and paying me $125,000 to do the plan.
okay, all right, let's check it.
Our plan is to hire a consultant, to not pay them more than $75,000, to involve staff, to involve the public for public input, to involve the planning board, the HPC and CAC, and y'all. Ultimately, y'all will approve adoption of a plan. So we hope to handle this sensitively to the people, certainly the people that live out there. They
Right.
need to have a big voice in what happens with the place they live.
Right.
So we will take every step we can to gather all the public input we can to build a good plan.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Okay. I think we've gone through every item on the agenda.
One more thing that I'd like to
Okay.
interject for this evening is that our police chief is going to have a conflict on Tuesday, and Sergeant Leonard is going to be here instead. So he'll be here Tuesday, but he wanted, if it was okay with you, to have the opportunity to address you this evening before we adjourn.
Yeah. And thank you for coming. Good evening.
I hope each of you are doing well. I thought I'd make it easy on Sergeant Leonard and do my normal spiel and presentation tonight. Maybe that'll make your Tuesday meeting a little bit quicker. So, the monthly report was provided as usual. Calls are remaining steady is what we anticipate for this time of year. Spring time of year, we get a lot of movement around town, but it's not excessively high. So this month we're at 1,262 events. With the majority of those being self-initiated and officer-initiated activities. I know there's been a little bit of discussion about the shots fired calls inside the city limits. If you note, there were 4 of those noted for this time period. Kind of the way that works is every time you're dispatched, regardless of where the incident occurs, it's going to be logged. So most recently, we assisted East Spencer and picked up a shots fired call while they had no officer on duty. So that will fall underneath these stats that you will see. So anytime we assist on that, you may see additional stats, and it could be anything, breaking and entering and whatnot, larceny. We wouldn't be the agency that would hold the report on it, but it would be reflected in our stats for the month. But nothing really out of the ordinary on our stats this month. We did take possession of our 2 vehicles, 2 of the 3 that was approved in the most recent meeting. So we're definitely appreciative of that and your support of the agency. Our 3rd vehicle, I believe today, I was happy and told Peter it's on the truck and arriving in Greensboro either tonight or tomorrow night. So hopefully we'll start rolling off these old vehicles. I just submitted the forms to do 4 retirements, 4 vehicles, and we'll start getting these really old vehicles off the line and out of the parking lot, and a little bit of money back in the general fund. But I will definitely take any questions you have this evening.
Do you have any questions?
I have one thing, and I apologize for not coming to you first to find out the facts of the matter.
Not a problem at all. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody helping out. I mean, it's good to bridge that gap between the citizens. So we like to be kept aware. I will say that I'm very happy with how the citizens have responded after we had that community forum. So we are getting a lot more calls in. So you may see higher call volume noted on here, but for instance, on the instance you're talking about, we had 3 dispatch calls inside the city limits and then 1 in East Spencer. So more people are calling in. So every dispatch call, even if it is one location where it occurred, it will be tallied up in here per individual address where it was called in at. So if we have an offense that occurs on 5th Street, but somebody on the 6th, 7th calls in, we'll actually show 3 on our report for each individual that called in because we'll make contact with all 3 of those. But yeah, things are going well though. I appreciate it.
That being said, Chief Brown, are you having any difficulty in terms of targeting or acquiring the necessary information you can, the documentation that you need in terms of problematic absentee landlords?
Not currently. We've been pretty good, so I'll kind of update you on the 3 that we have in the program right now. The one on South Spencer that obviously was a hot button a few months back. That one was just rented out to a new tenant, and as requested with part of the program, we were provided with a copy of the new lease and provided with the criminal background check that they did on that tenant that goes into that resident. So again, the remedial action program portion of it stays with the parcel, not the individuals in there. So even though there's a new tenant in there, they are still underneath the requirements of remedial action until such time that property falls off of that. So they'll still be required to work with us on anything that may occur in that area. We've had no additional complaints or problems at the apartments in South Carolina, and we are currently working with the court system on the eviction process for the house that's here behind Town Hall. So the individuals were ordered to be out of that house within 10 days. Unfortunately, it is their right to appeal it, so they appealed it to a higher court. So we're waiting for the new court date to be set. We've not had any additional problems at that location since then, but it will go up before another judge. Myself and Detective Everett appeared last time before the previous judge, and we'll appear again on this. So, but as far as cooperation, we're kind of building each time we're having individual contacts with these landlords. For instance, one behind the building here, that landlord also owns 4 additional properties. So we're sending our monthly reports to him for all the properties that he owns in town, not just the ones that are under remedial action. So the first of the month, Susan runs that report and sends an update to the landlord to advise him if there's been any calls to that location. So just kind of as a precaution, we're sending them out for every parcel. Fortunately, the good thing is, there are individual landlords, but a lot of our properties that are rental property owned by one landlord owns multiple properties. So as we make contact with those and get that out, that's something we're going to offer to do for them to kind of keep them involved in what's going on.
You're repeating on something. And I talked to Steve Blunt about it earlier. I think the onus should be on the property owners to make sure that they have tenants in there that aren't barbarians and cause the neighborhood multitudes and law enforcement multitudes of problems. And I don't know if it's possible. It may very well be, but if these absentee landlords own multiple properties, I think that if you can document, and I may be wrong, you can let me know, but in my opinion, if they continue to allow this to go on, then they should not be able to own additional or purchase additional property within our municipality. Again, I appreciate your efforts in doing what you're doing.
Definitely. Thanks very much. Any other questions?
I do.
Huh?
If you don't mind. Chief, I just had a complaint from a citizen, and I just want you to check on it. Harrison Street, one block up from the high school. There's 2 cars that sits on that intersection right there. One of those cars does not have a license, and it's been sitting there, and I understand, for several months.
I believe I'm familiar with the one you're speaking about. Unfortunately, part of our ordinances fell off about us being able to enforce that stuff, and that's part of the rework I believe that's going to be occurring on some of our ordinances that allow us to enforce vehicles like that. I did speak to somebody on Harrison Street. I'm not sure if it's the same one about a car that was left parked there. We actually made contact with the owner of an adjacent property who advised it was a friend of his that had moved out of state. He had offered to let the guy leave it there. Obviously, we told him that as not necessarily appropriate, but we don't necessarily have the ability to tow it at this point. Being that there is a valid property owner that has allowed the person to park the vehicle there. But I'll double check on that one to make sure it's the same one though.
There's 2 cars there. One has a license plate. No one doesn't.
Okay.
The one that doesn't, it's got all kinds of garbage. Just like a storage unit.
Yeah, we checked on one, so if there's a second one there,
But
it may be a different location, but it was
It's
in
two
that
cars,
same
like I
neighborhood.
said, one has a license plate, one doesn't.
Okay,
I just kind of question why we leave cars on the street, public street, without a license.
yeah, it seems like there may be more to that one, so we'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or feedback?
I think the question I have might not be for you though. I had a question about trucks turning the corners up there at 17th Street
Mhm.
and damaging some of the property of the individual's yard. Would that be something that you would take a look at, or is that something for Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, quite often, I mean, obviously damaged property, it depends on whether it was done intentionally or not, but I mean, it would be something we would look at and see what's causing it, what the individual involved is, so.
Ms. Bates asked me to
Mhm.
have somebody take a look at it.
Okay, yeah,
Possible.
we can make contact with her. So if you've got her contact information, I'll get that from you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
They say,
Okay, does any member of the board want to say anything before we leave? Okay, I did want to say, remind people to go to the library thing on Saturday, 2 to 4:30. I think it's Faith, Family, and I can't remember the other name. I know it's 3 a.m. Anyway, it sounds
fireworks.
no, it sounds like a great event. So hopefully some of you will be able to go there and like to see a lot of Faith, Family, and Friends. I don't know what it was. I've got it written down somewhere. Okay. Also, I wanted to mention that Northland Middle School does need proctors on May the 11th and 15th, and they wanted to see if any board members or staff members would be available. So you can get in touch with me if you feel like you can do that. And those are the only announcements I have. Anyone else have something?
I have a question, Madam Chair. We have piece of information here about closed sessions. Is there some reason that we have this with us today?
No, I just did.
Perhaps it's left over.
It was just a handout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see it now.
One quick thing on events. We were able to reschedule the movie The Little Giants for the 8th Street Ballpark. It will take place Saturday, June 17th, and the movie will probably start somewhere between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. We'll get the word out. Yeah, I'll make one and get it to him.
Are we going to do cruise-ins again this summer or not? Or cruise-ins, are they going to still be going?
Each one that we had, I went around and the vehicles became fewer and fewer. But I got to talk to a lot of people. I had hoped, just as with Winterfest, when I gathered a group of people together and it took off. I felt like that it wasn't really the town's responsibility to forward this all the time, that someone within that group would step forward and take the responsibility and run with the ball, but they never did. I've since then I've had inquiries from several people, and I told them, look, we have a parking lot. It's been the information's been put out there that anytime that you want to come and have your group here, you're more than welcome to do that. We don't want to hamstring you on a certain day, certain time. We welcome you to our town. And Chief Fowle will probably back me up because I had talked with him, this was last year, and also Chief James when the commission started. As long as they comply with our laws, we have, the police are not going to harass them. So it's getting people to, do that, to take the responsibility of doing that has been like pulling teeth. So we'll see.
If we're not sanctioned, do we have any liability issues then?
What?
If we are not saying that we're sanctioning it, do we have any liabilities as far as anybody in the parking?
I wouldn't think so. No, that would be a question for JD.
One note I'll add is about just in general with events. We are working on an events listing. There's actually quite a few events that are on the horizon over the next few months, and one that's coming up July 1st will be the what we heard about last month with the fireworks event. We've been coordinating with the museum staff, and we're going to have a more organized approach to what happens on this side of the road, but we're wanting to have kind of a more seamless event that could encourage folks to go take part in what the museum's offering, but maybe have a few things happening here too. So we're working on that. We'll be keeping it ready up to date.
Briefly on that would be an excellent opportunity to engage some of our youth here. I mean, I've got to be honest. I've been here for a lot of time and stuff. I have never seen that in the downtown Fort. There must have been 10,000 people. I don't know how many people they counted over there, but you literally could not move in any direction like a half mile. It was insane in a good way. It's
Yeah.
cool. So I mean,
Yes, that's part of our thinking is especially with the restaurants to make sure they're aware, because we think it'll be a popular evening for folks to enjoy what we have.
Okay, anything else?
I think one thing for recognition, for the events that the Candido Garden is done. The events at the community garden for the Derby party and
Okay. So you won't recognize them?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
They
looking
had
at
that Kentucky Derby
I'm
party.
looking at Steve.
Anything else? Okay, is there a need to go into executive session? Okay, if not, is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, Mr. Morgan, second? Okay, Mr. Miller?
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Silent cow over here.
the meeting is adjourned.